Hey, what's up, guys? Welcome to Lawsplaining the Interwebs. I am your host, Nick Rekieta of Rekieta Law, a small law firm in central Minnesota. And today, today is much earlier than I think you'll be seeing this. But we'll say today anyways. This video is is a comedy stream of sorts for me. All right? This video is something I love very much because this video is the pie in the face, I guess, to all the people out there who are legal experts and who think, and when I say legal experts, I of course mean that tongue in cheek, who think that they have any idea what's going on. Talking to you, comics pros, talking to you. When you dummies out there with your fake legal education and expertise come out and start telling people what the law is, what people will can sue for and can't sue for, where the claims are, and I tell you you're wrong, politely tell you, no, of course there's a claim here, or no, there isn't a claim there. Maybe you should listen. Maybe you should listen, because your fake legal education is going to get you in real trouble with real lawsuits, you idiots. You stupid pile of idiots who think you know better. Who think with impunity you can say what you want about people, you can mess with their businesses, you can drag their names through the mud, and you can threaten to get their contracts destroyed. That's not legal, you dummy. And I told you it wasn't legal, you dummy. And the funny thing is, you thought that it was just me trying to pimp some sort of channel or raise up outrage, but it wasn't. It wasn't just me. There's other attorneys out there who actually know the law. Shockingly, a whole pile of them. And your non-attorney self, who we appreciate the work you do in comics, really do. You have abilities that I can't touch. I can't draw. I don't know how to create and market comics in the way you guys do, although I may disagree with some of your strategies on the marketing aspect. But you have a demonstrated ability in one area of this world, and I have the demonstrated ability in the other. So when you question my knowledge, that's fine. I'm happy to be wrong all the time. I'm happy to be wrong about everything. But I'm going to sit here and gloat a minute because when I get to be right about my field of study in the face of a bunch of dummies who aren't in my field of study telling me otherwise, I get to sit in that. It's like a sweet hot tub of champagne. I don't know. That sounds disgusting, actually. But I'm going to sit in it anyway because it sounds expensive. All right? So let's talk about Richard Meyer, the Madman, suing Mark Waid for being a giant idiot. Shall we? Could it get any funnier than this? Probably. It probably could get funnier than this, because this isn't funny. This is serious. This is actually really serious for Mark Waid. He should be concerned. He should be very concerned. Because, as I stated before, you can't go around wrecking other people's contracts and causing them financial harm because you disagree with their politics or you think they said mean words. This is reality, not Twitter, you giant idiot. Let's talk about it. All right, so this is a summons in a civil action brought in the Western District of Texas. This is brought in United States District Court under federal law, not under Texas law specifically. It is brought under, we'll talk about the jurisdiction. They make the jurisdictional case very well in their complaint, which is coming just after this summons. But let's talk about the summons because it sets up the dates. This was summoned Summons was served. Summons and complaint were served on 9/21/2018 at 7 p.m. directly to Mark Waid. That means that Mark Waid has 21 days from the receipt of the after the service of the summons to go ahead and respond to this. That puts it at October 12th, technically speaking. Although, let me just clarify, it may actually spill over to the 15th. October 12th is a Friday. October 15th is a Monday. It may spill over because they sometimes make an allowance for a late in the day service, which in this case, 7 p.m. is after business hours. That's late in the day. And so they may give them an extra day, which would put it on Saturday, which would kick it to Monday. Maybe. I wouldn't risk it. It would be an argument they would have to make. Terrible decision. Just do it by Friday if you're going to do it to avoid a default judgment. So this was served. We're not going to get into all of that stuff. It was served upon Mark Waid. And let's just go ahead and get over to the complaint. I can't take it. This is when I get to be smug. This is when I get to be just a tiny bit smug, and I'm okay with being smug. I'm only okay with being smug when other people get to be wrong who called me wrong, who had no business to call me wrong. That's when it happens. That's when it happens. Plaintiff's original complaint. This is only an 11-page document. I think the complaint itself is actually only 9 pages, and there's a civil cover sheet. So we're going to go through it like we normally do. Back to the classics. We're going to go through the case line by line and talk about anything that needs to be talked about. If you've been following this channel, some of this stuff's going to look kind of familiar to you. Plaintiff Richard Meyer files this original complaint seeking damages from defendant Mark Waid. If you notice, there's a difference here between other lawsuits we've seen, maybe filed in New York, a couple of them that we've looked at, where they have this big introductory statement and they start telling a narrative story. This is district court, y'all. You can try and do that, but you have a couple ways to approach lawsuits, right? You have, and Alex Jones has done this too, and the people suing Alex Jones, they kind of open with this nice sort of prefatory or preamble, prefatory statement or preamble to their lawsuit where they start telling the story first and then they get into everything. Or you can just do a straightforward approach, which is, bam, here's the facts, it's done, let's get it out of here. You don't need a sob story if the law is on your side. And I'm not saying that the law is 100% on the side of Richard Meyer here. I think it is ultimately on his side. I don't know that a judge is going to rule. You never know what a judge is going to do, right? You never know what a judge will do. But when you think you've got the law on your side, sometimes it's a powerful statement to just lay it out without telling this, without trying to garner an emotional response. All right. Anyway, sorry. The parties. Whoa. Plaintiff Richard Meyer is an individual residing in Williamson County, Texas, and is a citizen of Texas. Defendant Mark Waid is an individual who may be served at his residence located at 11276 Street 401, Santa Monica, California 90403, or wherever he may be found, and is a citizen of California. Jurisdiction and venue. This court has jurisdiction of these claims and parties pursuant to 28 U.S.C. 1332, because this is a suit between citizens of different states, and the matter in controversy exceeds $75,000. Okay, so when you have a civil suit between two citizens that you want in federal court, there are a couple ways to do it. One of them is through something called diversity jurisdiction, and that's what they've done here. And I'm not going to explain all of the others, but diversity jurisdiction means party A is in one state, party B is in a separate state. The controversial, or the amount in controversy is over $75,000. That's a statutory requirement. It used to be $20, I believe, was a statutory requirement, but with inflation, it is now $75,000. So this they want serious claims in federal court because federal court is very expensive to the taxpayer. It's very expensive to the parties involved. So they don't want a $500 claim in there. $75,000. Now, it doesn't mean that the award will be $75,000 or more. It just means that one party in good faith alleges damages in excess of $75,000. All right, so, and there's all sorts of ways to argue that. The ultimate result of this lawsuit, or any lawsuit brought under diversity jurisdiction, will not hinge on the idea of $75,000. So that representation is just one party believes they've been wronged to the amount of $75,000 or more, and now we can bring it to federal court. The court could absolutely say, you are right that you were wronged, but you're only awarded $10,000. There's no requirement. I want to be very clear on that. So we don't know what ultimately what the court will do. Venue of this civil action is proper in this court pursuant to 28 U.S.C. 1391 because a substantial part of the events or omissions giving rise to the claim occurred in this judicial district. So that's the next part of jurisdiction, and venue is you have to claim that the court is the proper venue. In this case, the judicial district where it's brought, the Western District of Texas, is where Richard Meyer resides. And that means the majority or a significant portion of the impact of Mark Waid's actions, which would be defamatory statements and then specific tortious interference. We'll get to those claims in a minute. But tortious interference and defamatory statements are going to be felt where Diversity in Comics lives and does business. Because tortious interference obviously is interfering with his own contracts. I believe Antarctic Press, which we'll get to, is also located in the Western District of Texas. Mark Waid, being in California, made the statements, but he made them online, and he called, allegedly, called Antarctic Press to interfere, allegedly, with the contract in Texas. So that's why venue is proper. It's where the claims and where the damage takes place is a great way. You don't have to use that method, but it's a solid method to establish venue, and it's often the most convenient for the plaintiff. Factual background. Meyer's passion for superhero comics. Richard Meyer is a lifelong fan of comic books. It started with G.I. Joe in the 1980s. Meyer's family was in the military, and Meyer looked to G.I. Joe as a military hero. Meyer later became intrigued with another Marvel comic, X-Men. Like G.I. Joe, X-Men was about heroes fighting against evil forces, but these heroes were endowed with superpowers due to genetic mutations. Half of the X-Men were women, and Storm, an African-American woman who could control the weather, was one of the X-Men's leaders. Both G.I. Joe and X-Men were racially diverse teams with women in key leadership roles, #LadyJ, even back in the 1980s. Meyer continued to read comics, especially Marvel superhero comics, into his adulthood. In his 20s, Meyer followed in his family's military tradition and enlisted in the Marines. During those 4 years as a Marine, Meyer was deployed to Iraq and attained the rank of sergeant. After his honorable discharge, Meyer went back to college and completed his studies. There were some statements not related to Mark Waid, I don't think, that Meyer was dishonorably discharged, and the people who were perpetuating that rumor should be shunned and shamed. I'd say worse. They should probably be punched, but we don't punch people for words, typically. So they, while I might feel that way, you shouldn't actually punch them. But anyone doing that is a pile of garbage. Shaming the military service or lying about someone's discharge is not cool. Not cool. After college, Meyer joined the military again, this time as an Army sergeant. Meyer served another 4 years, and during that time was deployed to both Iraq and later Afghanistan. Meyer continued to read comic books and graphic novels during his years of service. Creation of the Diversity in Comics YouTube channel. Over the years, Meyer had grown increasingly disappointed with what he perceived as the declining quality of the comic books being published by the two dominant industry publishers, Marvel and DC Comics. That decline was accompanied with decreasing sales of comic books overall. The quality had declined in Meyer's eyes due to the publishers' hiring of inexperienced writers and editors who did not have credentials consistent with those historically recognized within the comics industry. Meyer believed that the stories were poorly written and increasingly uninteresting and were becoming overtly politicized. Meyer attributed this trend and the accompanying decreases in sales of comics due to the publishers' decisions to ignore their fans' preference for superhero comics and replace those comics with new characters that promoted political ideologies, which Meyer believed dilutes the genre. Moreover, criticism of the industry by comic book fans was met with hostility, derision, name-calling, and profanity from top-level editors and comic book writers and artists. In April of 2017, Meyer started a YouTube channel called Diversity in Comics with the intention of providing comparisons of the superhero comics produced by Marvel and DC Comics in the 80s and 90s to the comic books that were being produced today. Meyer's first video reviewed a 1997 Captain America comic book written by Defendant Mark Waid, where Meyer praised the drawing, storytelling, action sequences, and plot development. In fact, Meyer described the book as a classic in the superhero genre. Meyer continued posting videos on Diversity in Comics reviewing older superhero comics as well as current comic books that were being produced. During the following 17 months, Meyer published and uploaded over 1,300 videos, and his YouTube channel amassed over 88,000 followers with over 28 million views. Meyer's criticism of the new politicized comic books, his videos clearly resonated with industry followers and consumers, was specific and often biting, sarcastic, and hyperbolic. Although, admittedly, at times, his attempts at sardonic humor fell flat. Through all of this time, Meyer's aim was to rescue the comic book industry from what he saw as its own self-imposed demise through the over-politicization of stories and dilution of the superhero genre he had grown to love. Although Meyer had many followers, his challenges to the entrenched status quo within the industry also gathered a very vocal group of detractors, including Waid, who had an even larger group of online followers. Waid is a highly influential presence in the comics industry, having spent 4 decades working in establishment positions with industry leaders, Marvel and DC Comics, before becoming a freelance speaker and commentator. Waid currently works on multiple comic books published by Marvel. During his long career, Waid has written multiple series that are considered classics in the industry. Waid has thousands of friends following his Facebook posts and almost 100,000 Twitter followers. Waid and his followers were either part of or supported the comic book industry establishment that Meyer routinely criticized on his channel. Both Waid and his followers were angered by Meyer's critical account of their comics and their use of comics to promote political ideology, resulting in sometimes pointed and public exchanges with Meyer over the validity of his critiques. So this is an interesting approach, given the nature of the defamation claim that's coming. Mark Waid, Meyer is establishing both he and Waid, specifically Waid, but himself, which is less important, Waid very important, as a public figure. And with that, with Waid being established as a public figure, it opens the door to a pretty strong defense of the, my brain got crossed. It's important that Waid's a political figure. It's important that Meyer is setting himself up as a political figure. That's the more important one, because it weakens the claim that Waid has defamed him. Defamation requires actual malice, a heightened standard when political or public figures are involved. Whether or not Meyer rises to the level of public figure, he doesn't specifically claim yet in this complaint, but he's making a strong argument with 88,000 followers, 28 million views, and being a voice in the comic book industry that's being recognized that he is or has become at least a limited public figure, which would make Waid's case a little stronger against him. But that doesn't mean you can't defame a public figure. It just means it's harder. So we'll talk about that as the defamation claim comes up. All right. By contrast, while critical of politicization in comics, Meyer himself is not politically motivated, nor does he hold political views outside of the mainstream. He just believes that political agendas should not be embedded into comic books, and that doing so is a significant factor in the demise of the comics industry. I would agree. I would agree that many industries are going to suffer and have been suffering because of the overt politicization. I don't think that's a radical view. For example, the number of stores specializing in sales of comic books has dwindled over the past 10 years from over 4,300 to about 2,100, and the number of books sold has dropped approximately 50% between 1997 and the present. Clearly, the product being generated by the industry leaders is not appealing to modern audiences in the same way that Meyer's treasured superheroes of his youth were embraced. This demise has been presided over by two industry giants, DC and Marvel Comics, who dominate with roughly 90% of the market share, while similarly 90% of the distribution of books is controlled by a single entity, Diamond Comic Distributors Incorporated, which holds an acknowledged monopoly over direct comic distribution in this country. Independent artists and producers face significant hurdles in getting fresh products to the comic book consuming marketplace. But everyone will tell you, everyone in the industry behind the gate will tell you that there's no gate, no gatekeeping, but everybody there will tell you that there's none. Without sponsorship from DC or Marvel and support from Diamond, new voices cannot be heard effectively through traditional channels. And that's the argument, right? Everybody, sure, you can print a comic book and go hand it out on the street and try and sell it on the side of the road. That's not the same thing. That's not the same thing as having access to the major market distribution system. Getting the face time of your book on the shelf of stores is something that you need. You need the support of. You need significant support, we'll say. Meyer's aggressive criticism led to unfounded claims by establishment supporters like Waid that he held a number of socially extreme views which are flatly untrue. By late 2017, media reports began to emerge characterizing Meyer as a bigot, a racist, and part of a group that promotes white supremacy. At various times, Waid has described Meyer as a serial harasser of women and minorities and claimed that he promotes hate and intolerance. These statements were intended to discredit Meyer and detract from his vocal calls for fundamental change within the comic book industry. Jawbreaker's comic book and Waid's interference with Antarctic Press. Now we're starting to get to the real meat of the claims. One of the criticisms leveled by Waid and others against Meyer has been that he had only complaints about the emerging low-quality products and had no solutions or appreciation for the difficulty of creating quality work. Meyer decided this point had some validity and that he should channel his vision into creation of what a comic book true to what tradition should be. On April 9th, 2018, Meyer publicly announced that he was publishing his own comic book, Jawbreakers, Lost Souls, a story about 5 ex-superheroes that can't come out of retirement to protect a giant mutant ape from being exploited by a warlord. It was a decidedly apolitical, straightforward, multi-superhero comic. It is devoid of any bigoted, nationalist, racist, or gender themes. Meyer had teamed up with top-tier artists to illustrate and color the book and was in discussions with a small, independent San Antonio-based comic book publisher, Antarctic Press, to publish and distribute the comic book. On the same day, Meyer started a crowdfunding campaign to finance the book. Campaign raised over $50,000 in the first 4 days and over $110,000 by the end of April. Clearly, the market was looking forward to a fresh voice and an alternative to the establishment's status quo. The crowdfunding campaign officially closed on May 9, 2018. By that time, Meyer and Antarctic Press had agreed on the terms for publishing Jawbreakers. This is important. This is important. They had agreed on terms. They'd come to an understanding, a mutual understanding of, this is the implication that they're getting at, of what the exchange of promises would be. The exchange of promises and the agreement to terms is called, in philosophical, esoteric terms, is called a meeting of the minds. And when you have a meeting of the minds about all of the material terms of an agreement, you have a contract. A contract is not a piece of paper. Many, 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 many business deals are done without any piece of paper, without any signatures. You do not need that. That is evidence of a contract. That is not a contract in and of itself, although we colloquially call them contracts. So that's an important thing because one of the defenses that Waid would surely raise is that there's no physical contract. There may be, but it's not attached here. But there's no physical contract for him to disrupt, and he didn't have knowledge of a physical contract. Not a good defense, but it would be silly of him probably to not raise it. But that's not a good defense to this type of claim. All right. They agreed that Meyer and his team would produce the book and that Antarctic Press would publish and distribute it. Promise, promise. You make the book, you create it, we will publish and distribute it. Those are two promises, exchange of promises. You're exchanging legal obligations that you don't otherwise have. You're giving up your legal rights to the other person. Your legal right to not publish the contract or the the comic book is what you're giving away. You're saying, okay, I have a right to not publish this, but I'm giving this away in promise to you. I will now do it. And Meyer's under no obligation to create a comic book at all. So he is giving up his right to not create a comic book. Now he's saying, I will create this comic book because you're going to publish and distribute it. So now you have an exchange of things of value, an exchange of rights that have a value. All right, that's called consideration. It's a basic tenet of contract law. You have to have an exchange of legal obligations to have a contract. So they're setting that up. They're doing it without, explicitly stating that because they're dealing with a judge. But I'm breaking that down for you guys in case you're unaware of how contracts are actually formed. And most people really aren't aware of it because it's really complicated and boring and you don't have to deal with it. It's kind of inherent, but the mechanics of it in a legal sense get, they get bogged down in being really uninteresting. In addition, Antarctic Press agreed conceptually to publish future comic books written by Meyer, including Iron Sights and later Jawbreakers editions. Jawbreaker editions. Jawbreakers being a Rose McGowan movie, not to be confused with Jawbreaker comics. That same day, rumors and leaked chat transcripts suggested that certain retailers aligned with Waid and his followers had agreed not to carry Meyer's book and to boycott Antarctic Press because of misinformation being spread about Meyer and his views. Now notice, this lawsuit is not raising claims against those comic shop owners. He's setting up something different here. First, he's setting up the misinformation being spread about Meyer and his views. He's setting that up to specifically talk about the misinformation spread by an industry giant like Mark Waid. Second, he is setting up, how do I word this? He's setting up damage, right? He's setting up damages that all this stuff has caused. Okay. Initially, Antarctic Press was not flustered. Also, he's building a contrast. That's the other thing. Instead, Antarctic Press announced, in response to comic book shops saying, we're not going to carry the product, Antarctic Press initially responds, and this is something everybody seems to forget. That just shows me we're doing the right thing standing with you. They have an agreement. They've affirmed publicly an agreement. That's an important statement in all of this. This isn't Meyer making up that they had an agreement. This is Antarctic Press saying, yep, we're still publishing the book, even though people say this, even though that these people over here have threatened us, we're not backing down. That's the contrast that's being set up with Mark Waid's call to Antarctic Press, which is coming up. Later that evening, Antarctic Press publicly announced on its Twitter page, it's official. We're publishing Jawbreakers in September. Guys, if that's not an acknowledgement of an existing agreement made public so that anybody can reasonably know it exists, anybody who's following this, anybody in this story anyway, I don't know what is. Less than 36 hours later, Waid tweeted to his followers that he was going to contact Antarctic Press to interfere with its impending publication of Meyer's book, saying, let me put a brackets before I read the quote, saying, I'm such a smug, virtue signaling pile of trash that I'm going to announce my intent to violate the law and interfere with someone's contract because I'm too stupid to know that this is illegal. I'm too much of a dummy to know that this activity has been frowned upon, I don't know, forever. Forever, you dummy. Ugh. And I'm going to just announce it to the world. Had Waid not tweeted this, had he not been so eager to self-aggrandize his virtue and sell it to the world about how he was going to save them all from the horror that is Richard Meyer and his mean words. Had he not done that, had Antarctic Press just backed out, it would have been much harder for Meyer to make the claim that Mark Waid was directly responsible for this. What an idiot. What an idiot. Oh, arrogance. The arrogance of the ivory tower, y'all, is ridiculous. It's so funny. And you can see it laced in all of these people. But the best part is their ivory tower. It looks like ivory from afar, but when you get up, it's made out of styrofoam. These guys, these giants in the industry, they're like middle class people, which is fine. Nothing wrong with being middle class. But oh my goodness. Oh my goodness. They don't realize what they have on Marvel and DC because they've sold it. Look to guys like Ethan Van Sciver. Look to guys like Diversity in Comics making more money per book than some of these guys will ever make selling to a smaller audience because they know how to market and they're not stuck in this traditional trap where Marvel owns you and DC owns you and takes all of your money and you defend them, you dummy. Oh, you silly, silly people. You're so ridiculous. Okay, so here's what... Sorry for the tangent. Let's get to what Mark Waid actually said, although I'm pretty sure my bracketed paraphrase is the reality. I have a call into Antarctic Press. Until I hear back, I'm hesitantly willing to give them the benefit of the doubt that they don't really understand who or what they're getting into business with, which, though it would seem a stretch, is a possibility. If I do hear back, I'll report in. Oh, will you, Mark? Oh, thank you. Thank you for your service, you giant cuck. On information and belief, this triggered an onslaught by Waid's followers against Antarctic Press, with calls and threats to Antarctic Press and its owners, other unaffiliated businesses. Now that they're saying that they believe that this happened. They don't actually know, but they have some information and some reason to believe that this happened. Later that day, Waid spoke by telephone with one of the owners of Antarctic Press and convinced him that Antarctic Press should repudiate its contract with Meyer. Frightened for its very survival by Waid's threats, and primarily because of his unwelcome interference, Antarctic Press caved to Waid's pressure and issued the following statement. And guys, what other reasonable conclusion can we draw than Mark Waid specifically stating, I'm going to do this thing to stop this deal from happening, and then having the deal stop from happening? What other conclusion could we come to than Mark Waid intentionally interfered with a contract and did in fact interfere with it, causing breach? What conclusion could we come to? I don't know. I mean, maybe there's one. I'm open to suggestions for it. Mark Waid called and said some things. We didn't believe a word of what he said, but then we later came to our own conclusion that what he said was true. It doesn't work that way. That's not how... Anyway, let's see what he said. Let's see what Antarctic Press's statement was. After careful consideration, it is the decision of Antarctic Press to not release the comic series Jawbreakers. Antarctic Press is a staunch believer in creators' rights. Are you? And giving creators a chance to showcase their creation, allowing that creation to be judged on its merits. Except now, many forces, many of them, should be viewed with great trepidation. What forces are those, Antarctic Press? Want to clarify that statement? Who should be viewed with great trepidation? Is it Richard Meyer, who you were standing by like 36 hours earlier? With great trepidation about our society acts, I think he means how our society acts, have led us to this decision. We do not take this decision lightly, as we do believe that there should be separation between art and the artist, and that separation has been blurred in our decision. So we're compromising our own principles. Why? Why would you do that? Why would you do that? Would it be because of pressure or statements from a third party interfering? I don't know. We'll find out, won't we? Almost immediately following Antarctic Press's announcement, perhaps having been warned that his interference was actionable, Waid deactivated all of his theretofore quite active social network accounts without explanation. Following Antarctic Press's experience, no other publishers would consider publishing Meyer's comic book. Meyer's only option was to self-publish by creating his own independent publishing company, which he did. At significant expense and after significant delay in publication of Jawbreakers, Meyer is now performing all the tasks that Antarctic Press would have performed in the absence of Waid's interference with Meyer's contract. Instead of pursuing other potential business interests, including writing additional comic books, Meyer is responsible for overseeing the printing of Jawbreakers and arranging to ship copies ordered online through Meyer's crowdfunding campaign. Meyer's loss of access to independent publishers due to Waid's interference is not limited to increased production costs. As a result of Waid's actions, Meyer has been effectively blackballed by the comic book industry. No publishers, independent or otherwise, are currently willing to consider working with Meyer on Jawbreakers or future projects. Meyer could not even find a US-based artist for his next book and has resorted to contracting with one he located from the Philippines. Access to conventions and convention panels is also linked to being published by one of the dominant or independent publishers. It's an incestuous circle, guys, like all of these traditional media. Comic books is no different from the news, the major news stations, CNN, NBC, MSNBC, ABC, Fox. It's no different from them. It's no different from any other gate-kept industry. If you're not in bed with the big boys, you're not going to all of the events sponsored by the big boys designed to bring attention to the big boys. They don't want the criticism. They don't want it. There's no gatekeeping in comics. Just remember that. Not one. Right, you dummy? I know you're going to watch this video. There's no gatekeeping, though. None. Enjoy the Kool-Aid, you moron. The lack of access to those markets has further damaged Meyer and is a direct result of Waid's interference with Meyer's contract with Antarctic Press and false statements. In the meantime, Waid has described the events of May 11 in interviews and on comic convention panels. Because he can't shut up. Because he can't do it. He's got to tell you just how virtuous and great he is. He's got to tell you just how many people he has saved. He's got to do it. He doesn't know how to not do it. And it's so funny because it's so dumb. Waid has falsely stated that Meyer published a list of comic book stores with the first and last name of the comic book store's employees in response to the store's decision to not carry Jawbreakers. In doing so, Waid suggested that Meyer was encouraging his followers to harass or threaten the comic book store's employees. Footnote. In fact, Meyer had only identified the stores identified in the leaked chat transcript that had agreed not to carry Jawbreakers and the individuals who were part of that conversation. By repeating this false allegation, Waid further alienated Meyer from the comic book stores and fans at large in the industry. Notice what they've done there. False statement of material fact. False statement of fact that has caused damage. False statement of fact caused damage. Also, knowledge of the falsity. And I think with the Antarctic Press charge, it's clear that Mark Waid has done this with what is called actual malice, which is knowledge of the falsity or reckless disregard for the truth with an intent to cause damage. With an intent to cause damage to Meyer's reputation and his business prospects. Absolutely. Without a doubt. Plus, his statements to Antarctic Press could qualify as defamation too. Let's see what he claims. Cause of action. Tortious interference with contract. Meyer had a contract with Antarctic Press for the publication of his Jawbreakers and other comic books. Waid either had knowledge of the contract or had knowledge of the facts and circumstances that would lead a reasonable person to believe there was a contract in which Meyer had an interest. Waid openly stated that he knew about the agreement and was calling to let them know that the agreement was not in their best interest, if you know what I mean. Right? So he knew there was an agreement. That is obvious. Obvious. Through the actions described above, Waid intentionally induced Antarctic Press to breach its agreement with Meyer. Waid's interference proximately caused injury to Meyer for which he seeks damages in excess of $75,000. Defamation. Through his various social media accounts, Waid intentionally published statements of fact to his followers and to the general public regarding Meyer, including falsely stating that Meyer published the first and last names of comic book store employees to encourage his followers to harass and threaten them, as well as characterizing Meyer as a racist, serial harasser of minorities, and as affiliated with white supremacists. Those statements were false and were published with actual knowledge of or reckless disregard for the statement's falsity. I think this is part of the strategy Meyer was going for in setting himself up as a semi-public figure. He was stating that Mark Waid's defense, if Meyer was not as big as he was, would be, well, how am I supposed to know what some random guy on the internet is? But Mark Waid seems to have quite a bit of knowledge about Meyer, who, if I am not mistaken, has 3 minority children. And is not a white supremacist or affiliated with them publicly in any sort of way. I would assume not privately, but I can never say what's done in private. And here's the thing. Calling someone a racist, probably not actionable. Otherwise, everybody would be sued for defamation all the time in 2018. Calling someone a serial harasser of minorities is an accusation that could rise to defamation. Are they harassing minorities? That's a pretty bold statement to make, especially if it's meant in the context of harassment or if it's meant to cause damage to someone. And affiliation with white supremacists, you better be able to prove they're affiliated with white supremacists, because that's a different thing than being called a racist. You're affiliated with the KKK. Whoa, wait a minute. That's massively damaging to someone. That can end careers, that can close all sorts of doors and cause them direct damage, including putting them in danger. From the KKK and from many people who might be opposed to them, that can put someone in physical danger. So you better be able to back up a statement that someone has an affiliation with a white supremacist. You can't just bandy that stuff about. I know it's 2018, it's current year and all, but you can't do it because there are real consequences to it. And if you're lying about it, you're a pile of garbage. And you have affiliation with piles of garbage, you pile of garbage. Exemplary damages. Moreover, Meyer's injuries were the result of Waid's malicious acts. Waid acted with the specific intent to cause substantial injury or harm to Meyer when he interfered with Meyer's contractual relations and defamed Meyer. Because Waid acted with malice, Meyer is entitled to exemplary damages under Texas Civil Practices and Remedies Code, section 41003A2. Exemplary damages just means more money under specific circumstances. Alternatively, Waid had actual subjective awareness of the risk of harm to Meyer, but proceeded nonetheless to defame Meyer and to interfere with Meyer's contractual relations with conscious indifference to Meyer's rights, safety, or welfare. Likewise, when viewed objectively from Waid's perspective, Waid's actions involved an extreme degree of risk, considering the probability and magnitude of potential harm to Meyer. As a result, Meyer is entitled to an award of exemplary damages as a result of Waid's grossly negligent conduct pursuant to Texas Civil Practices and Remedies Code 41.003A3. So they've covered 2 different sections of the code under which Meyer might receive exemplary damages. Jury demand. Pursuant to Federal Rules of Civil Procedure 38, Meyer demands jury trial on all the issues that may be tried to a jury. Relief requested and prayer for relief. Based on the foregoing, Meyer requests the following relief: actual damages of over $75,000, special damages in the form of lost profits proximately caused by Waid's interference with Meyer's contractual relations, exemplary damages, costs of court, and all other relief to which Plaintiff Richard Meyer shows himself to be justly entitled. Wherefore, Plaintiff Richard Meyer respectfully requests that the court enter judgment awarding the relief requested above against defendant Chris Waid. Chris Waid? It's Mark Waid. Little typo there. That does not change anything. Before anybody is worried, I don't know why they have Chris Waid, but they'll have to fix that. A mildly amended complaint. They can make amendments for clerical errors with relative ease. Respectfully submitted. Fritz, Byrne, Head, and Gilstrap, PLLC. This is an attorney or a law firm with roughly 12 attorneys in Austin, Texas. They're not a tiny. They're not like a tiny firm. It's not an independent guy. It's not some random attorney looking for money from Richard Meyer. This was signed by a senior partner of the law firm, Daniel Byrne. This is written by, like, I want to point out that it's not some rando who signed this document and agreed to take this case. It doesn't mean automatically that it has full merits or anything like that, but it does mean that this isn't brought by some random hack in the middle of nowhere like me, right? If I were to bring this case after talking about it on YouTube, you might have questions about it. I've long said I don't have jurisdiction. I don't have. I'm not licensed to practice in the state of Texas. I couldn't take this case. So having a senior partner from a firm do it, and look up Daniel Byrne's bio. By the way, he's been a practicing attorney, a trial attorney for 35 years. Guy presumably knows what he's doing. So here's the civil cover sheet. It just talks about what's going on. It's brought under diversity jurisdiction. Citizens of this state, incorporated and principal place of business in another state. This is a contract claim, original proceedings. Here's the cause of action, jury demand, all that stuff. This is very boring, but you can look it over. Here's the document, if you will, if you want to see it. Doesn't really say anything new. Everything was covered in the complaint. So anyway, guys, thank you very much for watching. I will be covering the outcome of this case. When you see this video, it may be that this case is resolved. That might be the first time we get to talk about it. We'll see. We'll see. I'm recording this video in advance of this story breaking, but I will be waiting for it to break to release this video. If it breaks when the parties have settled everything, then it breaks when the parties have settled everything, and I'll have a follow-up video about it. If it breaks prior to that, I'll release this video and we will cover the case as it goes. Thank you so much for watching, guys. I hope you enjoyed this, and we will talk very soon. Have a good night.